Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. This week's episode, I want to talk about love of self and love of kind, and how self-love must come first because it's natural. Now, it's clear that Black people in America, specifically I'm talking about descendants of American slavery, a specific group of people. Not only do we have an identity problem, we have a confidence problem, and we have a self-love problem. We want to be something that we are not. And I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit later. And I think it's important that we recognize, descendants of American slavery, that we are a distinct group of people. And we have been made distinct. Now, yes, we can say and we acknowledge that we are Black people and that we, being Black, are brothers with other Black people on this planet. That will always remain to be true. However, there are nations of Black people on the planet, right? There are nations of Black people in the Caribbean. There are nations of Black people on the continent of Africa, right? There are nations of Black people in Australia. So there are nations of Black people. And we, Black people in America, specifically descendants of American slavery, whether we recognize it or accept it, we are a nation of people, and others recognize this about us but us. And as I said, we are a distinct people, made distinct by the virtue of the experience of chattel slavery in America. And although I know that this history that we share is something that can be embarrassing or something that we can be ashamed of, I say we do not need to be ashamed of the past experiences of our people in the chattel slavery. This is not something that we should be ashamed of because it, in fact, makes us a people that are a favored people. Now, let's be very, very clear. Nations participated in slave trading. Now, although we are descendants of American slavery, nations participated in us having the experience that we had in North America. Not a single nation, right? Although we were slaves of America, there were slave traders from Portugal, from Spain, England, France, right, participating in the transatlantic slave trade. Even our own people on the continent of Africa. So it's not just one single nation. Some nations were responsible for building the ships. Some nations were responsible for transporting the slaves. I mean, there's no single group of people that we can point to and say, you did this to us, right? We even must include our own original Black people on the continent of Africa. And this is not part of our history that is highlighted as much as it should be, not because I want to kind of dime out or create a division, between our brothers and sisters who are on the continent of Africa. But we in America, descendants of American slavery, we must know the truth in all matters. And the truth of the matter is that our people participated in the slave trading. And I think about the movie Woman King that starred Viola Davis, and that nation, the Dahomey Nation, that was highlighted. That kingdom of people had those woman warriors, the Ogoji, and they were the nation's military, right? And history has documented that from between the 1680s, 1700s, captives from their warring and their fighting and killing other tribes, captives of the Dahomey were sold to European slave traders. Yes, Black Africans were capturing, killing some, capturing others, and selling other tribes to Europeans. And this is something that reluctantly ended in the mid 1800s. So, and this was just one nation of people. There's a history of Nigerians selling people to the slave traders. And this is not always a history that groups of people who participated in are ashamed of. And for some, we could say, man, it's really awful that, people participated in this way. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of sympathy or shame from other nations of people who participated and enriched themselves and enriched their people on the trauma of our suffering. And so it's not one single nation, it's nations of people who participated. And yet our self-hatred, coming back to descendants of American slavery, our self-hatred shows in the reverence that we give to non-American Blacks, right? Our people who come from Haiti, the Caribbean, Africa, or Europe, whether they themselves or perhaps their parents, they take great pride in where they come from, and they should. And we seem to have a reverence for them that they see that we don't have for ourselves. We think that other people are better than we, and other people agree that they are better than we. And so much of us and our deference to people or our imitation of other people, I understand, and it understandably comes from a place of wanting to escape shame and a humiliation of our experience, because our perspective or our view of our experience may be a shameful one. It may be an embarrassing one, and it's understandable. However, it is our experience. And if we would just understand how great this experience has made our people, a people who have been treated so unjustly by the entire world, who our unjust treatment, our inability to govern ourselves, the stripping away of our identity, other nations reap the rewards of that. And, others recognize the self-hatred in us. They see us putting them on a pedestal. They enrich themselves in our destruction. And we see that the ignorance and our own lack of ambition, our own unity, that's a result of this horrific experience that our people had. And it was an awful experience, right? But work must be done to repair the harm that was done to us. But it's an internal work. It is not a work that we should expect to come from those who participated in our destruction. When I say that we are looking to others or the ways of others or the culture of others and showing love there. So let's talk about Black History Month. And I believe I've used this example on the podcast before. When we look at how when Black History Month comes, now we have in America so much history here that we should talk about, that we should celebrate. And when we have our ceremonies or our Black History programs, I question, why are we wearing kente cloth? Black Americans, why are we wearing prints that are associated with nations that are not ours? American descendants of slaves are a distinct group of people. Now, there's irony, because while others demean us, demoralize us, castigate us, we also see that they come and they imitate us, right? The richness, the creativity, the genius that is in this descendant of American slavery, the talents that we have, the gifts that we have, the trends that we set. We see others coming and pinching a bit off here. They pinch a bit off there. They put it mainstream because we are just such a special people. We are such an attractive people that although they kick us, they hate us, they still pinch off of that which is ours. I was watching a Richard Pryor Little Richard. I was watching a Little Richard documentary, and just learning about the history of rock and roll, and that's starting with us, right? The history of blues and jazz, and that's starting with us. And this is just like culture. This is just music. This is just entertainment. Our dance, that there's just something distinct, right, about this American descendant, of American slavery. There's something very distinct about us. And, there were stories about enslavers saying, wow, these people are okay in this slavery. Look at how they're enjoying themselves, right? When you had Fiddler, if you watch Roots, you know who I'm talking about when I say Fiddler. You watch the singing and the dancing that we did, even during hardship, like American chattel slavery, which is an experience unlike any other. And so even in the persecution, the lynching, even in the pain, the egregious assault, the brutality of American slavery, our gifts still shone forth. And so people come, they come from other nations and they collaborate. They want to collaborate with some of our producers, our artists. They come and they imitate what they see, and they pinch it off and they apply it. But then they say that, Black people in America have an identity problem. Black people in America are uncivilized. Black people in America are savage, right? Well, then reject us and give us back the appropriation that you take from us, right? And so now I will say that we do engage in uncivilized behavior. We are savage against self. This is the result of the 400-year experience where our humanity was stripped away. There were Black people who visited America but did not come to the plantations to see about us, right? But they came and they were, in New York and United Nations, and, it was known America was enriching itself through the crops that were harvested by their slaves. But, these great leaders of these Black nations didn't come see about us. and say, man, this is where our people have been all these years. Well, we have to come into America where we sold them off to and see about our people. That did not happen. But now after we find our, we have rights and we have liberties now, and people can come in and benefit from the civil rights and the liberties and some of the civil advancements that we are able to participate in, but they still look down upon us because we look down upon ourselves. We have to love self and kind before loving others. We don't see these other people having greater allegiance to others than they do themselves, and we don't want them to, because we want them to do what's natural, but we have to do what's natural. We have to love ourselves, and there's so much about us to love. Turn off social media, right? Or put down the destructive, erotic, pornographic content, the movies and the depictions of us that just show us killing and destroying each other. I mean, that's part of the experience of Black people in America. But why is that highlighted when there's so many other aspects of our lives? So if we would accept the experience that we had and recognize that it is qualifying us to be great, right? So you may say, well, how in the world has such an experience as that qualified us, Black people who are descendants of American slavery? How has this qualified us to be a great people? Well, if you are a student of the Bible and have been perhaps raised in the church, or you're a Christian and you might believe in the Bible, then I'll share what is in Genesis 15, chapter 15. And God is talking to Abraham, and he says, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance, and they shall go to their fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. Right now, let's survey the planet. Do we know of any other people that was a stranger in a land that's not theirs, and serve them and have been afflicted for 400 years? Now, when we were in chattel slavery and deprived of the ability to read and practice religion, and then when the slave master did give us a religion, he gave us the Bible without us understanding it because we couldn't read it. And then years later, we can now read the Bible, but we read the Bible without comprehending the Bible. A stranger in a land not theirs, they shall serve them, and they shall be afflicted for 400 years. I mean, we're looking in the mirror when we read these scriptures, right? And that nation whom they serve, I will judge, and then we will come out with great substance. So our experience, as difficult as it was, as shameful as it may feel to some, it is producing in us something very, very valuable, right? Now, you may say, look, maybe you're the Muslims that don't read the Bible, or maybe, you're an atheist and you don't believe in any scriptures. Well, let me just say that the cream always rises to the top. And there is no people who have been destroyed like Black people in America. Now, you can say that other nations had colonialization, other nations were subjugated, right? But other nations have an identity. Theirs wasn't stripped from them. And then we came up in this new nation, and we became a very, very distinct people. Others recognize us as a nation, and yet we do not. We have to love our Black selves, And we have to love our Black kind. We have to love self first. We cannot love others before we love self. And frankly, others will not love us, will not trust us, and will not accept us unless they see that we love, respect, and accept ourselves. It is just impossible to respect somebody who's not respecting themselves. I mean, how can you trust somebody and you see them hating their own household and they say, but I want to come contribute to your household? No, thank you. We're good over here. We just can't accept that kind of person. So we have to know who we are, understand that our experience made us a special, special people, and others see the specialness about us, the distinction about us. But sometimes we just don't recognize it in ourselves. And I'm here to tell you as your sister that we are a special, special people. And we have to recognize that we are indeed a nation of people. We are distinct by nature of our shared experience here in this nation. And we have to love self. Love self first before we're loving others. It is just a natural law. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property. And to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, norahmuhammad.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@norahspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.